Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. For today's valued viewer request, we've got new from Stuart Morley. Hello Stuart. Could there ever be a situation where you would jettison missiles, in capital letters, during a dogfight in order to lose weight from the aircraft and improve kinematic performance? Really interesting question, a really difficult one to answer. In fact, there isn't really any answer because every dogfight you go into is going to be different. But what I can do is give you at least some basic, very basic physics on it. So, first of all, we'll take it back to the question, should you drop stores in general in a dogfight? Yes, you should. Fuel tanks, get rid of them as soon as you can. Bombs, get rid of them as soon as you can. Rockets, get rid of them as soon as you can. Missiles, so air-to-air missiles, well, that needs looking at. So, the best thing I thought of doing is take the worst case scenario. The scenario where we get the heaviest air-to-air missiles possibly to look at this. F-14B. Carry 6 times AIM-54, the average of which times 6 will give us 2,760 kilos, 2.8 metric tons of missiles. And these missiles cannot be used in that dogfight. They're long-range missiles only. And for this dogfight, we're going to assume contemporary turn fight. So the F-14 is going to be turning with at least an equal plane. So that plane is always going to be high off bore sight in an equal turn fight. So you'll never be able to use an AIM-54, at least in the dogfight. And that's the whole scope of this video. We're just looking at the turn fight, a high off bore sight turn fight. And the other worst is going to be the FA-18C. It can carry 10 times AIM-120C medium range missiles. Again, no use at all for a high off bore sight, hardcore contemporary turn fight. So essentially useless. And each being around 150 kilos each gives us 1.5 metric tons of essentially useless AIM-120Cs. Now I say they're useless for this particular turn fight, but bear in mind that in the scope of the mission, you know, you're going to want to keep these and their expense and falling into the enemy hands. So that decision has to be made, and that's why you would want to obviously keep them. Although we can't use them in the turn fight, you might need them later in the mission. So our idea is we're going to compare a turn rate, a sustained maximum turn rate of this fighter here and this fighter here without these loads, so the missile shed, and then with these loads, then we can tell you the difference in degrees per second, and that will give you an idea of how important or how much effect you will gain kinematically with the missiles shed, and then you can go away and make the decision in the dogfight. Stand by for the data. We've got Hornet control, has just 2 wingtip sidewinders, and that's all they've got with half gas. And our loaded Hornet, half gas, 2 wingtip sidewinders, and 10 times AMRAAMs at 1.5 metric tons. And bear in mind, it's not just the weight of these, but it's also the induced drag, aerodynamic drag, as well as the induced drag from the airframes, aerodynamic drag of the missiles and pylons to think about as well. Well, not the pylons actually, just the missiles in this case. Let's look at the F-14. The control is going to be just, again, 2, not wingtip, but 2 sidewinders. And the loaded Tomcat is going to have 2 sidewinders, no tanks, and 6 times AIM-54. And one slip of the tongue I made earlier is that I said we were going to try and find the max sustainable turn rate. That's not quite true. What we're actually looking for is the max comparable turn rate of these fighters. If I wanted to get the max sustained turn rate of this fighter, I'd need to go at a certain speed, say 383 knots or whatever it is, for that airframe in that particular configuration. And that speed would then be different to that there. I'm going to do that, and that's a very difficult thing to do. What I'm going to do instead is get a max comparable turn rate, which means choosing a speed, say 400 knots, and then doing the same experiment, both of these at 400 knots, and getting a comparable turn rate. So first, control F-18. Oh, I need to turn the G limiter off. Can you remember how to do that, RC? I wish the HUD gave me turn rate degrees per second. I think that'd be an excellent thing to have, the turn rate meter in the HUD. In fact, when you think about it, it's crazy that they don't have that. Okay, so I'm doing my test now, 400 knots with the control Hornet. Okay, I think it's enough to get an average G over time. Okay, heavy Hornet ready to go. I can already feel the inertia of those missiles. Just after a while, when you've played enough flight sims, you just know it feels heavy. Right, G limiter off, on, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it feels sluggish. Sluggish, RC. Like a wet sponge. I can only, in fact, I can only do 6G. Look, I can only pull 6G. What a massive aerodynamic, and, well, it is all aerodynamic at the end of the day. Even the weight is mainly an aerodynamic problem, in that it induces drag on my airframe. But that's a massive difference compared to what I thought it would be. I can only get up to 6.5 G, and G pretty much translates to turn rate. But I got so slow I couldn't even maintain that. So right, I'm not going to do anything weird in this. I'm just going to leave it exactly as is. I know you can mess around with maneuver flaps, but we're not looking for the maximum turn rate. We're looking for the comparable turn rate. So control F14, 400 knots is best I can do it. The steam gauge. Oh, she's beautiful. Look at that. I can 9G. In fact, I think this might be too fast to turn in a Tomcat. It is, look. Too fast to turn in a Tomcat. Right. I don't need to do any more there. I can already see what kind of turn rate that is. Heavy. Nearly 3 metric tons heavier. Now, it's a very powerful aeroplane, so it may power its way through, but I mean, that aerodynamic, already it feels heavy. See, I can't get that big G I was getting before. So much extra drag. It's still doing bloody well. It's still doing a lot better than the F-18 was loaded up, and just shows how different drag indexes can change a plane's turning ability. Okay, that's enough. Okay, let's go and analyse the data. Out we go, please, RC. Okay, welcome to data collection. Let's go and get some evidence now. This is not going to be perfect. To the plus or minus 1 degree per second, I think. To the nearest maybe 100 feet of radius, I think we're going to be accurate here. So, let's get up to speed. 400 sustained, thereabouts. We've got a turn rate here of 18 degrees per second. The Hornet is the best turn fighter in DCS in terms of its degrees per second. I know some people say it isn't, but it simply is. I've got it empirically tested and videoed. So we are, this is control light. We're going to have a turn radius here of 2,150 feet and 18 degrees per second. Let's see where that goes. We have to create an average in our head because we're not going to do this mathematically. So turn radius is about 2,000. Turn rate is banging around 20 as an average, peaking up 21 there. 22. 2,000 feet radius. Speed sustained, 20 degrees per second, 2,000 feet radius, and 23 degrees per second. Okay, so I've interpolated that. I know it's not perfect, but it's near enough. I've interpolated that as 20 degrees per second at 2,000 feet radius. And let's go and get our heavy up to speed. I've got a turn radius, 3,000 feet. Where are we? Turn. Right, okay, it's got a low turn rate at the moment, so I'm not turning yet. Okay, and you can see it's obviously ridiculously low now. So 2,500 feet turn radius, thereabouts, and turn rate is around 16 average. You can see clearly there, 16 average. And a little bit less, about 2,300 feet average, 2,400 feet. 2,350, split the middle. I know nothing here is perfect, but you know, we're not trying to be perfect. 16 degrees per second at 2,350 feet. Turn radius. Let's go to control F14. Love the F14. I'm a terrible F14 driver, but kinematically, it can be, if you know what you're doing, you can be so good with an F14. Now, this is just a crappy little control test I've got here. I already know the figures of this anyway in my head, because I've tested this. So it's going to be a basic 20 degree per second fighter with 2,000 feet turn radius. I only did that bit, was sustained there. That, yeah, I'm happy with that. It was a 20 heavy. A bit more of a thorough test on this one. Just got to watch for the speed, make sure we sustain the speed. Just going to do the radius first. Radius actually stays really good. It's amazing how adding nearly 3 tons to this plane, and it can keep, it just never fails to amaze this plane. If it's realistic, and I don't know if it is, but look at that. We've had basically no addition to turn radius, maybe some addition. Just looking at the speed. It has got some addition actually. It's 2.2 thousand. It's not sustained at that point. It's not no longer sustained at 2,000 at the speed. It's about 2,200 turn radius. So it's done better than the Hornet with 3 times as much weight added, or twice as much weight added. Turn rate. It's actually done amazingly well. I struggle to believe that's realistic. Just look at the speed. Make sure you sustain 14. 19, 20, 18, 18. I'm going to put that down as 18 and a small increase in radius. So that handled those missiles amazingly well. How? Not the foggiest how. Because that, what that should be, is that should be loading 3 tons extra on that airframe and causing those wings to cause amazing drag. But again, I don't really know. I can just give you the figures as they are in DCS World at the moment. Okay, well here's the basic figures in worst case scenario, air-to-air missiles only. The F-18 handles those extra 1.5 tons terribly. It goes from a 20 degrees second, 2,000 feet radius at 400 knots down to 16 degrees per second at 2,350 feet radius. And radius is pretty much as important as turn rate. So you can see you've got a loss of performance of, I can't do a percentage in my head, but like 20%, 15% or something. And that's, if you're against a contemporary fighter, that means you're going to lose the dogfight pretty much. Okay. Worst case, F-14B, adding nearly 3 tons. It has a less effect, but still a substantial effect of a loss of about 2 degrees per second and about 10% in radius. So we're losing we're losing exactly 10% performance in the F-14B, so it's not as much. So 2 things learned from that. It's definitely airframe specific, because this has got nearly twice as much weight added, but has half the effect pretty much of what it has on the F-18. Again, you guys can argue about the realism of that. I've not got the foggiest. Sounds a bit fishy to me, if I'm honest, but let me know what you think. Those are the figures. You have to now determine for yourself whether it's worth dropping those missiles. And you can interpolate. If you're saying, well, that's unrealistic, you're only going to have 4 missiles, well, you can interpolate the difference. So if you only want 5 AMRAAMs on this plane, then it's no longer 4 degrees, it's 2 degrees. And it's no longer 350 feet added, it's 175 feet added. Okay, so that's the maths for that, as best as I can do it with the time that I've got. I hope that was useful, and see you later.